minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. And this is Hawaiian Potpourri. Welcome back to the program. We had been talking about depression. We had also been talking about some of the early announcements that I made with regards to Halinao Pono. And in closing this discussion, and of course, if you would like to join in a telephone call, our telephone number here is 524-1080. But in closing this portion of this discussion of depression, I want to say that what we are finding is that people who suffer from diabetes, normally there is at least a low-level depression that accompanies it. So if you have serious diabetes, you may also at times find yourself in a more depressed state than normal, or you may feel that this is not normal, that you should be depressed. That may be one of those problems. Now, as I say, we do have a series of methods for treating it, and I think right now the quickest, simplest is that idea of thought field therapy. And I have found that some of the algorithms, we call it, or tapping sequence that we use for depression, even for those light issues of depression, can be very helpful. And yes, so anyway, the classes will be the classes on how to do this thought field therapy will be on the 24th and 25th of July. I can give you more information. I don't have it with me right now, but if you would like to call me, my telephone number is 697-3045, and leave your name, your telephone number, and then I will call you back and give you any more information. The person who is conducting the class is Caroline Sakai, and she's a psychologist here in Honolulu, Hawaii, and the class will be in Honolulu. Okay, so I will close that discussion unless someone decides that they really would like to talk a little bit more about this subject of depression or any other subject dealing with mental illness, and in this case, some of the quicker methodologies that we use at Halinao Pono. I should make a disclaimer. I am not a therapist. I have been trained and I am certified in this particular thought field therapy, but my general profession or my training is more in terms of the law. I do have a law degree and a license to practice law, but at Halinao Pono, I'm more in the administrative executive position rather than as a practicing therapist. So I just want to make that clear. I am not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or any of the other specialties in the treatment area. Okay, so with that said, let's move on to the next subject. About 3 days ago, there was the 4th of July. People sort of celebrating and firing off these fireworks and engaging in various parades, and a lot of discussion about, well, not much discussion, but mention of the 4th of July, and when was that? 1776. And I conducted my daily activities, my daily routine in the same way without making any change. Went to work and tried to address things that needed to be addressed at work. Some people looked at me sort of askance. Aren't you in this celebratory state of being? Especially when they tell me I have a happy 4th of July, and I'm not sure what they're talking about. And they may just say, well, he's probably depressed. No, I'm not depressed. Or it may be that I know a little bit more of the 4th of July events than other people do. What I'd like to do is take a few minutes just to explain so that you may see a different perspective of 4th of July from a Hawaiian's point of view. And I'm not saying all Hawaiians have this point of view, at least this Hawaiian does, and I know many others who do. You see, what happened on the 4th of July in 1894 was that Sanford Dole and his group of people who now call themselves the Provisional Government, and they were formed after the Americans landed in 1893 in January. The 16th of January they landed, and then they participated in the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy, Queen Liliuokalani, and by doing so, then they overthrew the whole nation itself, because at that time our constitutional monarchy was based on a particular form or formulation of government. The American government, the U.S. military, and the minister plenipotentiary, the U.S. minister plenipotentiary to Hawaii, immediately recognized a new government that called themselves the Provisional Government. They had no constitution to follow, and these were previously known as the Missionary Party, or the missionary boys, because they were actually sons, mostly sons, but some daughters of the early missionaries of Hawaii, who violated the rules of the Board of Commissioners of Foreign Missions by stepping out of the pulpits of the church and entering those of politics and business. So these group of people formed themselves into the missionary party, and from there converted themselves into the provisional government, participating in the overthrow of the regime change of Liliuokalani, established themselves as a provisional government, attempted to sign a treaty with the United States, did sign the treaty, but the treaty was never ratified by the United States Senate. Instead, the President of the United States, a new president, actually not necessarily new because he had been president one term previously. Before Benjamin Harrison was president, it was Mr. Cleveland. Subsequent to that, Ben Harrison became president, and these events occurred during Harrison's administration. In the next election, Grover Cleveland ran for president again and won. So Cleveland came into office in about March of 1893, after the American landing in Honolulu in January 1893. And so as these events occurred, and Cleveland said that he would refuse to submit the treaty to the Senate of the United States because of what was discovered in his investigation and by his investigator, Minister James Blunt, and that he would never submit such a treaty to the United States. And in fact, he said, I direct all you Americans who attempted to or justify the landing of the American troops in order to protect American lives, their lives. And after the landing, then these Americans were recognized as the provisional government by the U.S. minister. Cleveland said, no, that's not appropriate. And so he directed the Americans to return the life of the land back to the Hawaiian people. They never did. Instead, what they said was that, well, we'll continue to hold on to power, and we will then hope that a new president will come into office and then try to resubmit the treaty back into the Senate. Why did they need to submit it to the Senate? Because the United States Constitution is absolutely clear that all treaties must be approved by 2/3 of those present in the U.S. Senate. So they couldn't get it through the Senate during Cleveland's administration. So what they did instead was this. They were still known as a provisional government without any constitutional format or formulation. And so it's hard to recognize the legitimacy of a government, especially when their name is provisional or temporary, and there was no permanence to it. There was no constitution by which they operated from, and there was no evidence that the people supported them. So this this is what they did, and this is all led by Sanford Dole on one side and Lauren Thurston, a partner to Sanford Dole in this scheme. And so what they said was, well, what we will do is form a constitutional convention so that we can adopt a constitution. And they are men of basically a democratic attitude. But for them, democracy should be read in a different way. And it was essentially to be read in the Southern style of reading democracy, and that is that all the people of color should not be participants, and we will give some guidance to this democracy. So the guidance that they gave was the following. They would call a constitutional convention, and there would be 37 delegates to this convention. 19 of the delegates would be appointed by Sanford Dole, and the balance, the other 18, would be elected by the Hawaiian people. But to leave absolutely nothing to chance, before you can run for these 18 positions and before you can even vote in this election of delegates to the Constitutional Convention, you must sign a pledge of allegiance to the provisional government, and in doing so, disavowing any allegiance to Queen Liliu o Kalani. So they limited who could participate in this elective process. They went ahead and they held their election. Very few actually participated in that vote. They selected their remaining 18, and then 37 of them met in a convention and adopted a document, essentially the same document that was given to them into the convention by Sanford Dole and Lauren Thurston. On the 4th of July, 1894, between the hours of about 10 to 11 in the morning, Sanford Dole and his cabinet begins to descend. They're in the upper level of Iolani Palace and begin to descend the staircase that faces King Street, with a Bible in one hand and guns in their pocket, and begin to go through the ceremony to invoke a new constitution in Hawaii. So Sanford Dole reaches the middle steps, which is it's sort of like a lanai or a platform. If you went to Iolani Palace, you would see how the steps are arranged. And there they held their ceremony in which Sanford Dole announced that a new constitution is now being declared, and that is a constitution of the Republic of Hawaii. So they're moving the government's form to the Republic of Hawaii from the provisional government. Prior to the provisional government, Hawaii had been governed by a constitution of the Hawaiian nation, in which the form of government was a constitutional monarchy, in which part of the legislature was elected and part appointed by the monarch. So it was somewhat of a democratic form that was now overthrown with the assistance of the U.S. minister and the U.S. military, putting in place a new regime. If you look at the patterns that the United States has been involved in terms of removing or having what we call regime change today, this is a pattern that was developed here in Hawaii. So that a new regime, a new president or prime minister or head of state is put into place and supported by the United States as long as they go along with the Americans. So this is what happened in Iraq and other places. This is what is happening in Afghanistan right now, in fact. So on the 4th of July, 1894, these events occurred. When Sanford Dole brought about this new constitution, the constitution itself already said that all of the government lands and waters of Hawaii, of the nation of Hawaii, were automatically declared to be those belonging to the Republic of Hawaii. That Sanford Dole was to remain the president of the Republic of Hawaii until 1900. Now, what they had anticipated doing was, of course, to submit another treaty of annexation to the United States after Cleveland got out of office in Washington and a new president came in. So they held that position for Sanford Dole until 1900. They also declared that not only were all of the government lands and all of the waters and the crown lands to be the possession of the government of the Republic of Hawaii, but all of the Hawaiian citizens were automatically declared to have them now become citizens of the Republic of Hawaii. While this occurred, there was no opportunity for a vote of the Hawaiian people to ratify a new constitution. Normally, in constitutional parlance or in constitutional development, if you're going to amend the constitution or adopt a new constitution, you have a process of ratification by which the people themselves are asked, do you support it? In this case, no process of ratification. So while the Americans were celebrating their Independence Day on the 4th of July, 1894, by firing their rockets and other activities and firing from their gunboats, the USS Boston out in Honolulu Harbor, the Hawaiian people lost their independence by this declaration. Now, this was another step in the transaction of stealing the independent nation of Hawaii from the Hawaiian citizens. So when people ask me, well, why aren't you celebrating the birth of the U.S. government? I suggest that if they really want to know, I can explain it to them. Oftentimes they just ask as more as a comment or as a statement of my lack of allegiance to the United States. Well, it's good that they're clear about that point. And the other reason they ask is really out of ignorance, and I will take the time to explain to those who are serious about hearing about it. But that's not often the case. So anyway, that's my views on the 4th of July. Our telephone number here is 524-1080. I won't be taking too many telephone calls because we need to go to news in about less than 4 minutes. But we'll take this caller. Aloha caller, thank you for calling and welcome to the program.
Aloha, Poka.
Yes, aloha.
Yeah, Poka, you should point out to these people that, really, if you look at it from a political science perspective, the 4th of July is not really America's birthday, because they were still under British rule on July 5, 1776. That's why they had to fight the war, right? I mean, if it was a matter of just signing this
declaration,
declaration, and then publicizing it, and that's it, then you could say, oh, yes, okay. But you see, the king, I mean, they were still British subjects.
That's right.
Yeah. So not until the king recognized their independence on September 3, 1783, now they become the United States of, or whatever they want to call themselves. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So, no, really, I mean, a lot of people, the day that our country was born. No. Because even they said, after they signed it, you hear the story that they said, gentlemen, we must now all hang together, or we shall surely hang separately. It's because even they understood, hey, we're not free yet.
So what would they be called? They would be in a state of uncertainty, or they would be self-declared but not recognized? They were treasonous.
Yeah. What they did was to declare in public, we are committing treason. Oh, yeah. You see, that's why they said, gentlemen, we must now all hang together. You see?
Yes.
They were not Americans yet. Oh, no. But people, I mean, we're not educated in these things, right? We are just crammed with all of this propaganda and indoctrination. Yeah. But
Yeah, you're right.
really, I've just by listening to Keanu Sai, I picked up on this.
I see.
I mean, these guys were like the provisional government.
Yeah.
You know, the provisional government, they merely self-proclaim themselves, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing.
Okay. Thank you very much for your call.
Okay,
Take
Poka.
care. Aloha.
Kaulana nā pua o Hawaii Kupa'a mahope o ka aina Iki mai ka elele o ka loko ino Pala pala anunu me ka paka Mane mai Hawaii moku o ke ave Koku ana honoa o Pi'ilani Ka ko'o mai ka ua I o mano Pa'aku me ke one o ka kuhi hewa Aolea e kau I ka pulima Maluna o ka pepa o ka enemi Po o hui ai nā ku ai hewa I ka pono sivila a o ke kanā